Verbal Jiu Jitsu. The other day when there was two women blocking the door, they stared back. I said, I'm trying to go home. They stared back and put my head down and said, submit. The only option remaining when a person gets forced to put their head down, to go to their home. All for the reasons they heard in their ears me singing down the street in the middle of an afternoon on a Friday. Not sounds of people fighting, a person singing in the sunlight in the late spring. And they stared and they stared and they held their cigarette and they held their keys and they shined their eyes at me. And I responded, submit. When a person says submit, similar to choking, similar to physical martial arts, the person responds, the person stares some more. The person responds, okay, well then it's over with. Responding okay because the person saying submit wasn't trying to go to the ice cream shop. The person saying submit wasn't raising a fist and saying conditions for entry. The person saying submit was trying to go home after going to the grocery store. Me. And submitting has to do with hormones. Women like the woman over there who's probably a witch, probably does drugs, probably never eats, probably stares at the wall and hits my wall while she's staring, never says anything nice, never has introduced herself, but gosh darn, she listens intently to what I do in my home. Having no idea who I am, where I come from, what my plans are, what my goals are, and what I'm trying to achieve. But the person knows what they hear and what they shouldn't hear, most importantly. The person says, no, you submit. Okay. I'm going home now. Problem solved in both examples. Staring and using your body and your strength as a 200-pound woman wearing a hijab who's Muslim with a pretty woman next to you with a cigarette and a short haircut against a male human coming back from the grocery store with no real understandable reason for blocking the doorway to the apartment building where I live and I have my home now. Strength being used for intelligence, strength being used against another person with staring and especially time, going really slow and thinking clearly and complexly and so deeply, a person eventually has to say, you're a bully. You're a social worker, counselor, and no longer does it matter how nice you are when it matters. Strength directed towards people especially women against men, has been the newest observation I've made since I was little. And how much support they receive for their choices. And how everyone talks about behavior and gestures and language and words, and nobody pauses or stops and says, can we get back to time now? Can I stop being misdirected, confused, and distracted, and not be able to do any engineering, not be able to do any books for medical school? All for the sake of a belief, a fact they know, the person knows, feels, and says has truth, and needs no explanation other than a stare, other than ears listening to a voice out loud in the summer afternoon, in the late spring afternoon. And this staring and this strength has to do with what people believe has a self. Controlling the self and getting those emotions back to a healthy standard. Limiting the self for the better of humanity and the world. They have decided with their limits and their words and their language and their letters not describing a brain and language out loud and singing, describing a process in a system with a word and letters, self, emotions, behavior, gesture, to solve the dilemma of inequality, failure, despair, poverty, hunger, sadness, and frustration. Setting the limits as anger. Preventing a person like me from going to the door angry and saying, you know, y'all are going to get the police called when you keep doing that kind of stuff to tenants. Letting that stare go at the perfect attentional blink. So much has to do with this speed and this timing. And I can't figure out why that's exciting. People used to carry stopwatches around, but they were coaches helping people get faster. Now people have an internal clock going tick-tock, 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 tick-tock. Waiting for awareness and attention to focus and concentrate. After the person like me has caused such a commotion and such horribleness. These aren't healthy people smoking cigarettes and standing with their chest out and thumping their eyes at me, slamming their hands on their furniture in the middle of the night. They're hormonally not in control, and they are not as powerful as they claim. And they take advantage of a person like me's empathy with mystery and magic and skill and grace. Leading me to the end of thought, where language stops, words stop, and letters turn into mathematics. Days I have to keep living in this ugly and disgusting place called Earth. Mathematics about how many hours in a day before I can just go to bed. Mathematics about the number to my apartment. And most importantly, mathematics for quantum mechanics. They're playing brain games, and they're calling it mental health. They're calling it the mind. They're calling it the self, and they're calling it all of these different descriptions of emotions and behavior and gesture and control and hormones. And requiring the breath and time to pass by for them to dominate, for them to have the strength and the power they need to keep freedom as not a possibility, but as a stimulus and a reward. Pushing thinking so far, the racist eventually has a case against these kinds of people and these folks. Being treated with the same parts of the body that did slavery in the old days. With different language, with different words, with different looks, with different ears and eyes. But with very similar restrictions and very, very, very scary ideology. With their faces and their voices and their soft, flourishing hair and their smoke-filled air. The end.